Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sherry Pollock, and I'm an Oregon resident, and I am the incoming municipal judge for the Township of Oregon and the Village of Oregon. First, I'd like to welcome all of you here on behalf of the Oregon Area Progressives. OAP is a local collaborative group committed to organizing support for a progressive policy agenda. OAP's mission is to build and strengthen the grassroots organization by educating and empowering people to act on local, state, and national issues. Today, OAP is sponsoring this forum for candidates of the Town of Oregon, the Village of Oregon, and the Town of Rutland. We will proceed in that order today with a 5-minute break between the municipalities for the candidates and audience members to switch. When your candidates are not here giving your answers, they probably will be available in the community room, and you're welcome to go in and have further discussion with them and partake in the delicious cookies and coffee provided by Kickback Cafe. Before we get going, I do want to thank those sponsors, Kickback Cafe and the Village and the Chamber of Commerce, for hosting and sponsoring this. We also want to thank all the candidates that are here today. And we want to thank OCA Media for live streaming this event on YouTube. The recording will also be available for viewing later on OCA Media's YouTube channel. And finally, thank you to our attendees for your interest in these important races and for being informed voters. All candidates in contested races from all 3 municipalities were invited to attend. Jason Marshall in the Town of Oregon, Melissa Kingsley in the Village of Oregon, and Norman Arendt in the Township of Rutland were unable to attend today. In order to cover as many topics as possible and offer equal courtesy to each candidate, we will randomly change the order in which candidates are asked to respond. Each will have approximately 1 minute for an opening statement, and again 1 minute at the end for a final statement. Then questions from the audience will be read by me to each candidate in a rotating sequence. Because this is a forum and not a debate, there will not be time for rebuttals during the question and answer session. Candidates, we ask that you keep your answers to approximately 1 minute so that we might get to as many questions as possible. We plan to end around 4 p.m. today, which means each municipality section of the forum will last about 35 minutes. Audience members, you received a piece of colored paper when you entered for writing your questions. If you write a question during the event, please hold it up, and one of the Oregon Area Progressive members will deliver it to me. OAP reserves the right to choose the questions from each topic area to be asked. We may screen questions for duplications and edit minimally for clarity. We ask that you be respectful and not interject commentary. So, let's get started. I'm welcoming the Township of Oregon candidates, Carl Walzer, Kate Gladding, Steve Jernigan, and Brian Richards. Let's start with opening statements, candidates, and we'll start with Carl.
Thanks to OAP, and thanks to OCA, and thanks to all of you. And if you want to come up with an acronym for yourselves that starts with O, that would be great. It would be easier. My name is Carl Walzer. I've lived in the town since 2002. Lived in Dane County since 1991. I'm running for the chairperson of the town. I'm currently one of the supervisors and was elected last year for that. My background includes finance, banking, marketing, and technology. I currently work for a company that creates custom websites for larger, credit unions and banks and things like that. Not like a pet shop or anything. The reason I'm running for the town chair is that I think that the board can move into some different directions and move a little faster than's been happening over the last several years. So I'm sure we'll have a chance to explain more as the evening or as the afternoon goes on.
Thank you, Mr. Walzer. Let's go to Brian Richards next.
Hi, I'm Brian Richards. I grew up in the Village of Oregon. In 2001, we moved out to the town, raised 8 kids out there. My background is I have 25 years as an elevator constructor. I went to school for electronics, so a lot of technical stuff. I became disabled about 8 years ago, and it's given me some time now. My kids are older to get involved in something in my community. As most of you know, the torque became a big issue. It got me a little bit more involved in what I thought would be a smooth rolling board, something we didn't pay much attention to. That got me interested, and I thought now would be a good time to step up and get involved.
Thank you. Let's move to Steve Jernigan.
Hi, I'm Steve Jernigan. My wife Cindy and myself, and along with our two girls, Lauren and Leslie, were both Oregon High School graduates, moved to the township about 20 years ago. I'm a UW-Madison graduate and taught in the Madison system for many, many years. I'm now retired, and seventh grade teachers are definitely allowed to retire after 45 years. I'm running for town board supervisor basically to help our community preserve the rural characteristics that we all enjoy and love, while also allowing for some compatible growth to our current developments in order to help to finance the projects and help finance our township moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Jernigan. Ms. Kate Gladding.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Gliding, and thank you for having this, for putting this on. I know it took a lot of work and effort, and I appreciate it, even though I'm feeling like a third grader doing their first piano recital. So I am presently on the board, and I'm running for re-election. And I have learned so much in these last 2 years. I have taken so many courses and training as far as capital improvement plan, powers and duties of town officials. I have learned so much. I have so much more to give than I knew before. And I have lived here for 32 years with my husband. I love this town. I think it's beautiful. The people are kind. I've gotten to know so many people through being on the board, and people that like me and people that didn't. And I've also had people tell me when I say, oh, this is hard, you should have tough skin. And my comment, I don't want tough skin. I want to continue to be me. If I were to have a motto, I want to emphasize kindness, being friendly, and being respectful.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to start with our first question. And I'll tell you ahead of time the order so you don't have to wonder if you're next. I'm going to start with Steve, and then I'm going to go to Carl, and then Kate, and then Brian for this question. All right, so we'll start with Steve. The question is, do you favor the town continuing to fully support and fund the senior center? And if not, why not?
I do. I think the senior center is an extremely important part of our community for not only the village, but the township and the other towns that are involved with it. It is an expense. It's a shared expense, and the little that I know about the financial end of it, I do know that the village puts in a good share. They, to my knowledge, have been very good about helping out the township when the township said, hey, we have so much in our pockets, and it's a great working relationship that I think has to continue.
Right. Thank you. And Carl.
I do support the town's relationship with the village senior center. The board, the town board, and the senior center group has been in negotiation for I don't know if it's more than a year, but it's close to a year. And the trouble is that, and you'll hear this probably throughout questions throughout the entire afternoon, is that towns are being hamstrung by a levy cap, by a limit on what the town can collect in taxes from residents, which is great if, well, it's really never great. It's more palatable if a town is growing and adding to the tax base. The town of Oregon has had very little growth, almost 0% over the last years. The trick in making everything work with the senior center is to figure out those budget issues.
Thank you. Kate?
So this is a good question for me because I have been the town representative on the Senior Center Municipal Group, and we've been spending a lot of time talking about the new Senior Center and all very excited about it and what will it be. But then again, we have the same constraints as far as budgets. So I definitely support it. My mother lived till 100 in Oakwood the last 10 years. I am a senior, so the town of Oregon will always, always contribute to the senior center. We are right now negotiating what the new contract will be, and I have spent many hours contacting all the different senior center directors in Dane County to find out how they're funded, how much money they get, and I'm bringing all that information to our meeting so we can decide what will be our contribution for next year.
Thank you. And finally, Brian?
Well, of course, I think the senior center is very important. I recently have learned that we are in the negotiations. I've looked at what we are paying for it, and I think we need to pay, we need to come up with a fair figure, and I think it's in good hands right now in what they're negotiating on. I think it's an important thing for our citizens to be able to enjoy too.
Thank you. All right, our next question from the audience is, since the town has had controversy over torque, how can the new board make sure residents of the town become informed about topics that may be important to them? And we're going to start, I didn't tell you which order we're doing. We're going to do it Kate, Steve, Brian, Carl. So Kate, you're first.
Okay, this is a good topic for me because I have been immersed in this situation and it's been very hard. And I think what we need right now, and we have brought it up several times, but it's always been taken off of our agenda, it's a policy of decorum, how we treat each other, how people that come to the meeting treat us. And we need the person that is chairing the meeting to follow those rules. I agree that we need a better way to get information to people. We tried in many ways, but things got kind of hijacked. I want us to have a way to get information to people what's happening in the town. So many people don't even know what the levy limit is and what that means. We need to explain all of these important facts to them and then get their input on how they feel about it.
Thank you. And Steve?
Yeah, getting the information out is obviously very crucial for all topics. Whether through the Observer, through the town's website, I don't know what the feasibility is through flyers, but I think input from everybody has to be there with good, solid information about the financing, about the history of torque. I just personally, in the last few months, just found out a lot more history of the torque than I ever knew. And I applaud the present board for making decisions that they did. I think it was a good decision made by people that really, really cared about it.
Okay. Brian?
Well, I mentioned before, this is one of the reasons why I decided to run now. I think getting the information out was crucial. I think we all get mailers if we're going to have rezoning, your neighbor's going to do something. That comes in the mail right out to you. Something that impacts the whole town should have gone out to the whole town, one way or another. Everybody should have been notified about that, and that's what we should do going forward. That might handle some of the problems that were handled in the town board, is get the information out there so people don't come angry wondering why they weren't involved with this. I think going forward, the biggest thing is informing the residents of something that affects all the residents, period.
Thank you.
I absolutely think that something that the board learned over the course of the torque discussions was that we were dropping the ball on communication and on information sharing. There were too many times where people came to a meeting and said, I didn't know that, I hadn't heard that. Like, so the town had typically posted on a website, had not really done direct mail or anything like that. There is an email notification system on the site, but only about 250 residents are signed up for it. So we're facing the sort of the same situation that any other, I mean, this isn't really advertising, but it's similar enough. You know, you think of the advertising you get, and you tune out most of it, I would imagine. It's kind of the same thing, or even worse, with town notifications. But we need to figure out a way that the information and communication is way better than it's been historically. And it wasn't just the town, not just the torque issue, but really every issue. We need to get more information out there.
Thank you. So I have another question from the audience, and this time I'm going to start with Brian, then Kate, Carl, and Steve. This question is, in 1 minute or less, what are your thoughts on ATVs on roadways? I'm going to start with you, Brian.
Well, I think, first of all, manufacturers don't recommend that they're used on the roads anyway. I think we should start there, that becomes a safety issue. I think there is use for farmers, people with large properties to use the vehicles, and there may be some need to get from property to property and limited time, but that can be done with a slow-moving vehicle signage. I don't think we should open this up to anybody to just run their ATV down the road. It's not safe. It's not wise. That's my view.
Thank you. Kate.
Okay, this was a really tough issue. It was a hard time because I first got on the board when a lot of people were trying to allow ATVs on all the town roads. And it really scared me because I didn't think it was safe. But I spent a lot of time looking at the statutes, talking to people, finding out what other towns had done, and found that 8-year-olds are allowed, if we allowed them on the town roads, 8-year-olds would be allowed to do that. They don't need a driver's license. Then we found from our insurance company that if we did not follow the statutes and what our lawyer recommended, if there was an accident, we would not be covered. So it seemed just a given that it was not a good idea.
Okay. And Carl.
So speaking of issues that would get somebody motivated to participate in town government, this was the one for me last year. Because, ATVs are fun, UTVs useful. I believe that there's an exception for farm use going from different parts of the property. But on the roads, forget it. I will never vote for that. I live in the Raven Oaks neighborhood, and there's just, if you take away the subdivisions, if you take away the roads where the speed limit wouldn't allow ATVs, if you take away any other type of roadway that wouldn't allow it, there's nothing left. There's no continuation throughout the town. The town isn't a destination for ATV groups. They'd be passing through, and that's about it. So I would never vote for it.
Thank you. And finally, Steve.
I also believe that ATVs have no place on the roadways. I'm an avid biker. I bike thousands of miles in the summertime. I know Kate and other folks do the same thing. Believe it or not, more than once I've come close to ATVs coming over hills that they were out there just having fun, I guess. But no, they don't have any place. And it is a safety issue, not just for them, but for everybody else around them.
Okay, thank you. If the audience has any questions, write it on your form and hold it up. I am going to go to a couple of other questions. This time we're going to go in the order of Carl, Brian, Steve, and Kate. This question is, board members are typically active in their communities. They know a lot of people. How would you recognize a possible conflict of interest as a board member, and how would you handle it? Carl.
So I primarily would look at financial benefits from a decision, and which I think is the way the statutes are written. The approach of not really dealing financially with someone that you're close to is just maybe not against statutes, but just a bad idea. So I think an arm's length approach to any kind of situation that feels like that.
Brian?
Another topic I'm a little bit familiar with, but first of all, I'd say the town needs to have some kind of ordinance on ethics or something written in their ordinance. It's a blank page. This has come up recently, and I think members should be aware of when something is unethical or appears to be unethical. From what I've read, is when something looks to be unethical or you think it might raise some questions, it might be unethical and it should be checked into. There are resources to check to see if you have a conflict of interest. And the board should be aware of that and maybe start by putting it right in the ordinances.
All right, thank you. Steve?
I think anytime there's a conflict of interest anywhere in government that, or legal, that if that would involve me, for example, I would definitely step back. And that would not be a decision that would be up to me, but up to fellow board members.
And Kate?
This is interesting because we are talking about this with our planning commission. There's a new member and wondering whether or not she has a conflict of interest in an area where a person might possibly want to develop something. So the town clerk sent a question to the town's association's lawyer. And the question that came back was, if you think there is, there probably is.
All right, thank you. So another question that we've prepared is, and this time we're going to go in the order of Steve, Carl, Kate, Brian. What do you see as a major issue facing your municipality in the next year, and what action would you take concerning that issue? Steve?
I think budget issues. Being a township, we rely obviously very heavily on our property taxes, on the rural community taxes, and I think, as my opening statement said, I think we need to find ways to work with what we have, with the developments we have, to be able to make developments to expand on them in order to come up with something very compatible that works for both the rural community, whether the farmers, the developers themselves, in order to enhance our budget for needs.
All right, Carl?
We've got sort of almost an embarrassing lack of long-term plans to cover the various functions of the town. At the foundation of all of that, we need, 20 years ago, the town did a vision project. You know, it asked the residents, where do you see the town over the next X number of years, 20 years? And that's long out of date. So we absolutely need to start that. We need to, I think almost to a census level type of questionnaire that reaches everybody in the town to see where they want the town to go. Aside from that, we need plans for roads, we need plans for facilities and equipment, we need plans for staff development. We need just about everything. The only concrete plan that I believe we have is coming out of the Plan Commission, having to do with the town's comprehensive plan, including probably land uses, primarily the main part of that.
Thank you. See, we're on Kate.
So I think the most pressing issue is definitely the budget. And that involves so much. Again, getting the town people informed. They did do that 20 years ago, a vision, and I think we need a new vision. The only way we get to raise more tax money is to ask, do you want your taxes raised, or to have some new development? And I don't know what the town would say. I think we really need to find out. I went to a lot of training courses my first year, and I never got any of these things really listened to. Let's have a plan. Let's have a capital improvement plan. Let's have a road plan. None of that stuff never happened. So I'm hoping moving forward, if I get reelected, we can work on some of these things.
Thank you. And Brian?
I would agree, the budget, I'll take the word of people who are already on the board. If this has been an issue for 20 years, I would think that it may not be the most pressing issue. I've had 20 years to look at that. Right now, the pressing issue to me is we have implemented something that is not very popular in this town, and it is going to be coming. And it's going to hit people and impact people, I think, a little more than people think it is. It's still an issue. We still have to maintain torque as we are going to keep it open without a real knowledge of where we've lost money there. It's never really been looked into. So it's going to become an issue coming forward still. It's not done. I think that's one of the most pressing issues right now, and that is part of the budget issue.
Thank you. All right, so I got another question from the audience, and it relates to what Brian just talked about. This time we're going to go in the order of Kate, Steve, Brian, and Carl. And the question is, if it would pay for itself, would you consider reopening Torque? Kate.
I don't think I can answer that with yes or no at this moment, but I need to explain that we didn't just decide this overnight. Back in 2011, at a board meeting, it was discussed that we were losing 50% of our grant to finance it. At that meeting, one of the board members said, we need to be proactive and start doing something about this. We didn't just rush it. We have pages and pages and pages of details and why. And if anybody wants those, they're there. We followed all the right procedure. It was recommended, let's see what the TOR committee recommends, and they recommended going to curbside. And there's a lot of people that are thrilled with curbside.
Thank you. And I will remind the audience to withhold any comment. Thank you. Steve, next.
Just piggybacking on what Kate said, I do know that 13 years ago, the budget for torque from the state was cut almost in half, and to this day it hasn't gone up one dime. So they're trying to run a recycling center on the same dime that they run 12 years ago. I can't run my car in the same gas prices that I ran 12 years ago. I am not in favor of reopening the torque the way it was, unless some magic wand came up and said this will benefit all of the township. I don't think it does.
Thank you. Brian.
Of course, I'd keep it open. If it could pay for itself, that makes sense. It's still very popular. The magic wand that was mentioned, I think, was there. It's been sitting there all along. It's in our ordinance. It was a window sticker. I had to get one when I first moved out. And that would allow everybody who uses it would pay for it. And not only that, we would have a count to who uses it. At some point, it may not become as popular, or maybe we can't fund it. But at least we could get some real numbers with the window sticker, and we could allow everybody who uses it to pay for it. It should have been implemented right in the beginning. So all along, it's been said it's losing money. If it's not losing money, why would we close it?
Thank you. And Carl.
I think even if the operational expenses were covered by a sticker or anything like that, I think that that approach misses any kind of future risks. So there are future risks to facilities, and when I say risk, I really mean expenses. Future risk to the facility upkeep, to equipment replacement or upkeep, and staffing is a giant issue, not necessarily a budget issue, but when there are 3 people staffing the torque, that's just not enough. And when we had, I think, 2 people who resigned that left almost no one, getting people to work at the torque, just an example, there was a petition that was signed by about 400 people. And we had, during the course of discussions, there were the openings posted at the torque for someone to work there. Exactly 0 people from that petition applied.
Thank you. So we have time for one more question and then closing statements. The last question, we're going to go in the order of Brian, Kate, Carl, Steve. And this question is, as it relates to the Township of Oregon, what do you believe are the major issues facing policing and public safety? And, so we're going to start with Brian.
I've been in a few meetings where we've discussed the increase of policing. I think if we had budget problems, first of all, we've dropped a constable and we've brought in Dane County, who does respond to our community anyways. It's kind of a tough topic, but we're continue to farm out all of our services. We used to have an assessor, we used to have a constable that's going away now. You know, there are some issues in this town that we need police presence. I think Dane County was a better move than the Village of Oregon Police Department. But I wonder if we're tightening the budget on things, if maybe that was a smart move to increase the policing. They have to be on board to enforce our ordinances. Otherwise, we needed the constable there. So we need some policing, I understand that. But I think that's another place we need to look at the budget and what we're spending on it.
Thank you. Kate?
Again, it is, I agree, a budget issue. And we pursued Dane County for policing when there was an area where there was a lot of problems in this neighborhood. It was not safe for the constable to go there, and it was not safe for the chairman. So the only way they could enforce the ordinance was to have someone from Dane County. So we do have the contract starting in spring. It's not going to cover a lot of time because we don't have the money to do everything that we would like it to do. It is a shortfall, and I wish there was better solutions. We have worked with road speed limits because for a while the speed limit was just reduced if someone wanted to reduce it. Well, we worked with Dane County. They did speed studies on Glenway, reduced it from 55 to 45, so now those speed limits can be enforced. So that's one positive policing thing that we did do.
Thank you. Carl?
So really at the heart of local government, town government, ours in particular, is two things, infrastructure and safety, right? So you want roads that are safe, you want bridges that won't collapse when you drive over. You want some kind of law enforcement available. You want fire and EMS services. I think moving to a contract with the Sheriff's Department was a good move. That's just been signed within a couple months or so. What's coming up, though, too, is we have good relationships with the various fire and EMS districts that are surrounding us and that share, we share the budget costs with them. What we're going to see on the horizon coming pretty soon is the need for those districts to buy new equipment. We've already seen some of the price tags, and they're astronomical. So there's a budget concern there, but we can't do without. We don't want you to call 911 and have no one show up.
Thank you. Steve?
Again, it's, I've been pretty consistent here. I think it comes back to budgetary area. The budgetary area. Police service that we have, I've had the misfortune of using it a couple times with the ambulance service, and I can tell you they've been fantastic. I don't know enough about this issue to really say a whole lot at this point.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move to closing statements, and I'll tell you this time what order we're going to go in. We're going to go with Carl, Brian, Steve, and Kate. Carl, closing statement, 1 minute, please. 1 minute, yes, 1 minute. Thank you.
Thanks again to OAP and to OCA and to everyone here. Obviously, we didn't cover a lot here. We're really kind of a time crunch. I've got a website if you wanted to look at issues and my priorities and things like that. And I promise I'll try to get it updated. Ron is shaking his head because he saw the last year's information. It'll be updated in about a day or so. If you have questions, there's an email or address on there, there's a contact form, so if you need anything answered or clarified of what I said tonight, feel free, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. What did I say, Brian?
Well, I don't have a website, but I'm available and easy to contact. I live on Highway A. I'm happy to have anybody wants to stop out, contact me, whatever. You know, I'm doing this to be a part of this community and give what I think I have to give and try to listen to the people out there that I've heard that feel like they haven't been listened to. I want to do a good job at this, and that's why I'm doing this.
Thank you. Steve?
I do have a personal website. It's just stevejernigan@gmail.com. I'm more than happy to take any questions. Most of the questions I get from people I've seen in the last month or so is more so an education for me. I really got an education of what does go on in the town. Those on the board know that I haven't shown up to a lot of board meetings in the 20 years that I've been here. I do have a lot of time. Torque, being a controversial issue that it is, I think also is something that opens a lot of people's eyes and got people talking. And hopefully that talk is going to go to a positive area so we can, as Kate says, play nice with each other and keep our community strong and strengthen it.
Thank you. And Kate?
Okay, one of the questions that was asked from the Oregon Observer is what sets you apart from your opponents? Well, one of them is I'm the one that has experience. So that's what I have to offer. But being a woman, I think I offer a different perspective that is important to have on the board. It is important that women be involved in all levels of politics, even here in Oregon. I have found that I am not always heard and want to change that for women that will come after me. Our point of view needs to be respected and listened to. I speak from the heart, but also with the voice of reason. Also, after a really difficult meeting that I just went home and wanted ice cream, somebody sent me a letter the next day and said he felt bad that this had happened, that you were the voice of reason, but also spoke from the heart with sincerity and courage and dignity. And I want to continue to be those things.
Thank you. So that concludes this part of the forum. I believe the candidates will be available in the community room if anybody in the audience wants to have a conversation and have a delicious cookie and a cup of coffee. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We'll take a 5-minute break to switch out the audience and the candidates. All right, so we're going to start the second session today for the Village of Oregon candidates. Some of you were not here for the opening, so I will just briefly describe how this is going to work. We will have an opportunity for opening statements from each of the candidate for 1 minute, and then we are taking questions from the audience. If you have questions, please write them on the yellow slip and give them to an OAP member, and they will file them up to me. We may be editing them for clarity or combining to avoid duplication. The candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question, so please try to limit your time to 1 minute. And then at the end, you will have a minute for a final statement. We are going to take approximately 40 minutes for this, and so we will try to move kind of quickly, and we'll do our best. All right? So we're going to start with opening statements, and we're going to start with Carleen Beschen.
Good afternoon. How close can I get? Is that good? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Carleen Beschen, and first I'd like to thank the Oregon Area Progressives, the Oregon Chamber, OCA Media, and the Kickback Cafe for hosting this candidate forum, and for all of you for coming out to learn more about candidates for local office. As I said, I'm Carleen Beschen. I am currently a trustee on the Oregon Village Board. My family and I have lived in the Oregon area since 1995. First, we lived over off of Netherwood Road, and then we lived on Union Road between Oregon and Brooklyn. And then 3 years ago tomorrow, we moved into the village. In my first term on the village board, we've accomplished a lot, from determining the location and budget for the new library and finally beginning that construction, to making some really tough decisions about how to balance the $36 million village budget, trying to keep taxes as low as possible and maintain services. As a trustee, I'm on the library board, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. I'm very proud of the work that I've done, and I hope I will earn your vote on April 4th.
Thank you. Derek Beal.
Hi, just to echo some of Carleen's comments, thanks to everyone for coming out today. It's fantastic to see so many people interested in the candidate forum. First and foremost, I'd like to thank my family and wife for all their support during all this. In our time, I am currently sitting on the village board. I've been there for the last 2 years. During the time, I've spent a lot of time of my tenure trying to increase outreach to the community. I've been able to talk to some student members to get some committee applications for vacant seats. Going forward in the next 2 years, Oregon's going to have some tough decisions to make as far as what to do and how to grow, especially in our downtown area. We need to kind of focus our efforts on balancing between the budget and space available. And with that, it looks like I'm just about out of time, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Jason.
Well, hello, my name is Jason Mankey, and I'd like to echo the Carleen and Derek's remarks. Thank you to the Oregon Area Progressives, the Chamber of Commerce, OCA Media, and the Kickback Cafe for hosting. Much appreciated. I got connected with Oregon first. My stepson, who had placement with my wife and I half-time, started going to kindergarten here in 2006. And then my family moved here in 2012 when I became pastor of People's United Methodist Church, where I served from 2012 to 2020. And I absolutely love this community. I love its values. While I was pastor at People's Church, I was involved in a number of different civic projects, including the creation of the food pantry at People's Church, and loved to see how that has grown. I was also part of the library steering committee, helping raise money for that new library that's going up, and I'm thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to serve the community again.
Thank you. And Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Wunsch. I too want to echo thanks to the organizers of this event and welcome you all here. I've lived in the village for 19 years. I sent my kids through the Oregon school system. I've been a trustee for the past 2 years and have been the most effective trustee in terms of developing new policy for the village. I initiated the implementation of the affordable housing report that the village had had sitting on, collecting dust on the shelf for 3 years. I initiated the creation and proposed and created the Sustainability Committee to get the village to start dealing with global warming and climate change and having less impact on the environment. I've made and proposed and got passed numerous, and I only got 10 seconds, numerous changes to village government to get more citizen input, and authored the memorandum of understanding for the library to ensure that the library had sustainability in mind as it's being built.
Thank you. We're going to move to questions now, and I forgot to mention that there will not be time for rebuttal. This is a forum, not a debate, just to clarify any concerns you may have in that regard. So our first question, and we are going to go in this order for this question: Jason, Carlene, Mike, and Derek. And here's the question. This is from an audience member. Board members are typically active in their communities. They know a lot of people. How would you recognize a possible conflict of interest as a board member? How would you handle it? Jason.
Well, conflicts of interest are very important to pay attention to. Conflicts of interest that are hard conflicts of interest, which I deal with in the work with the Wisconsin United Methodist Foundation, making sure my interests, personal financial interests, don't conflict with the foundation's. I'm losing my train. Conflict of interest is basically knowing yourself, knowing who you're connected to, knowing what you're invested in, and being upfront and naming that. If there's a conflict of interest, whether it's actual or perceived, I believe that it's important for board members to A, announce that out loud, and B, even if it's just perceived, step back from the decision that's being made.
Thank you, Jason. Carlene.
You know, this is kind of an interesting question for me because I did not run for public office for many, many years, even though I had been encouraged, because I really felt like I might not be able to represent more than my own interests in the things that I really believe passionately in. And I felt like a representative of the people needs to represent the people. So I have been super conscientious about knowing what I feel about an issue and making certain that I'm listening to people across all of the different elements of or interests in an issue, whether it be where to put the library or formation of a new committee, why we would do it, why we wouldn't do it, and hearing everyone. And at the doors, one of the things that I say to people on both sides of any issue is, yes, I hear you, I'm taking note of that, and I'm hearing these other people. So when I have a conflict of interest, I believe that I will be able to step away and say, my feelings are too strong on this, and I don't think that I can be objective. And I try to check that out with other people who know me, my husband, a few other folks who are in this room, and just to verify that I should or should not. So that's what I would do.
Thank you. Mike.
Yeah, I've tried my best to represent all of the citizens of Oregon. I do have an upcoming conflict of interest. My wife is part of the Oregon Sculpture Garden. They are submitting an RFP for the property at 249 North Main Street to develop that as a park. That has financial implications for that organization, for the village, and for my wife. And I will be recusing myself from that because I think it's unfair and not representing the entire community to be part of the RFP process.
And Derek.
So that is a fantastic question. Throughout my time on the village board, being the community member for the last 40 some odd years, I have a lot of connections to the community and family members that actually work for the village. I've made several abstentions, whether they're close family members or not. I have an aunt and a cousin that work for the police department that have abstained on recent events in their career, and also my children who work for Hy-Vee as they were applying for a liquor license. Transparency and integrity in local government are an integral part of keeping everything together and making sure that the community trusts the process.
Thank you. The next question is, we're going to go in this order: Carleen, Jason, Derek, and Mike. The question is, most affordable housing is not affordable for most seniors on a fixed income. What steps will you take to make sure senior residents can remain in this community? Carleen.
Thanks for that question. Affordable housing is something that we hear a lot about on the village board and that we talk a lot about on the village board. And we are looking at and thinking about, and as Mike mentioned, the affordable housing plan, ways to make sure that any new development has affordable options as part of it. I've also heard a lot at the doors about looking in new developments as they happen for more places, kind of like Rolling Meadows, but also like Genesis, so that there are options for people. I would like to see some of the property that the village owns now to be used for some affordable housing options for seniors. And if we are able or need to cap rents at a certain level, that would be another option as well. So I think as we look for developers, we need to be thinking about how to attract those who can accommodate the people who live in our village and the different income levels and affordability options for not just seniors, but other folks as well.
Thank you. Jason.
Yeah, affordable housing, both for seniors and workers, is near and dear to my heart. And I think there's some wonderful creative ways that we can work at adding more affordable housing that benefits folks who need affordable housing, and village projects. For instance, just thinking, I know there was a plan a number of years ago when a new senior center may be built. I believe that's in plans, and after the library is built, of instead of just building a new senior center, is using that whole area to build a senior center / community center and do affordable housing above that, and partnering with other organizations that work with that. It's also very important to continue to work with partners who work in affordable housing. And of course, we've got Gorman right here in town. We've got WIDA and a lot of other organizations, and I'm waiting for the stop sign, so I'll be quiet.
Thank you. Derek.
So as far as some of Jason's comments, yes, in conjunction with the senior center is kind of obvious as far as that needs to happen. We also need to kind of look at some of the other areas in town where housing can be supported. About 10 years ago, there was a project on the South Main Street corridor where I think that should probably be revisited. In my mind, affordable housing is not all just a house to purchase. When we look at things like the Adam Coyle project on the north end of town, those apartments are at a price point where people who may otherwise be able to, or may be priced out of the village, have a place to possibly go to at that point. We need to not only be looking at houses as in lots to purchase, but also housing from an apartment standpoint. There's a lot of people just looking for space to go, and we need more projects like that, and need to be in support of the developers who are bringing those projects forward.
Thank you. And Mike.
We need to make housing less expensive to build. We passed a parking ordinance to reduce parking costs so that new developments cost less. We are currently with the affordable housing project or report, the implementation of that, reducing lot sizes and setbacks so that housing becomes cheaper as it's being built. We also need to find a way to support the seniors and low-income people that are currently having problems staying in their homes. And one of those things, I think, is having a program where the village will defer taxes on senior citizens for the duration of their life in their home, and collect the taxes after the death of the senior when the house is sold.
Thank you. So the next question, we're going to go in the order of Mike, Derek, Jason, Carleen. And this is, I have a couple of questions regarding transportation. So I'm going to try to combine it into one. The question is, regarding transportation, what are your priorities with special attention to whether there will be connections or whether there could be connections to other communities from Oregon? Mike.
Yes, I would like to see as a priority connecting Oregon to the Madison Metro system. Working with the Madison Metro system to bring a bus down, whether it be to a park and ride on the north side of town or into the parking lots just inside of town. Depending on the results of the transportation study, the survey that we did, within Oregon, I don't believe that we have capacity for a bus service, but I do think that potentially having a van or some sort of on-call service to help people move within the village and get to the park and ride would be a valuable feature for a lot of our residents.
Thank you. Derek.
As far as priorities, hello? As far as priorities for the public transportation, I think we need to focus on a more localized level, especially given where we've decided to place our library. And with the upcoming work to the senior center, we need to be able to get our seniors to where they need to go, be it the grocery store, doctor's appointments, things like that within the village. And especially with the library project having moved out to the Alpine area, we need to be able to give the kids from the youth center reliable transportation to be able to get from that youth center to the library at times when they need it. Some of these kids, that's where they go after school. So we need to, I think as a village, need to focus on that. When you talk about public transportation, it's scale of numbers, and if you don't have that kind of ridership to be able to support a system connecting with the Madison Metro, I'd love to see it, but at the same time, I don't think it fits within the budget.
Thank you. Jason.
All right, so I think public transportation is important, but it really, I want to echo Derek's comments that it depends on priorities and who you're trying to serve first, and how much of it is done by the village subsidized, or encouraging a private business to do it. So I do know many communities have something that's called, in the Whitewater, Fort Atkinson area, the brown cab, where they give rides. You call rides, and back 20 years ago it was $1. Now I think it's $4 for a ride anywhere around town. That solves, working that type of solution would solve the helping people who are here who don't have transportation get around. I'm also very curious, and you can't figure this out in a survey, unfortunately, is who do we want to have here? Who cannot live here who would benefit from being here and aren't represented? And I have a lot more to say, but I will stop.
Thank you. Carleen.
Yeah, this is a really complicated question. There are matters of scale, as Derek alluded to. There's also matters of priority within the village. I would like to see us investigate, and the Transportation Committee, I believe, is doing this, investigate what it would take to have some local services for getting people to places around town, be that seniors or students, and to doctor's appointments. We have 2 clinics in town. Are they staying in town? What does that look like? And so, some of those issues, I think walkability and biking and prioritizing those within the village, making sure that our streets are safe for those things so that those people who do want to walk can get places. And I also think that a park and ride that would connect us to the city of Madison and possibly to Stoughton and Verona as well could be good options. I completely echo what Jason said about who can live here. Right now, if you don't have a car, you can't live here. And so that really puts it off limits for anybody who does not work in the village, who does not own a car. And that's even hard if you own a car and you live in the village and work here. So I'm very confident that the Transportation Committee is going to make some good decisions around this.
Thank you. So I have one last question from the audience. So if the audience has other questions, please write them down and hand them over to someone. I do have some other ones we can ask. This question, we will go in the order of Derek, Carleen, Mike, and Jason. This question is, where will protecting the environment and addressing the climate crisis fall on your list of priorities if you are elected? And how do you foresee using the upcoming recommendations of the Ad hoc Sustainability Committee? Derek.
I'm curious to see what the Sustainability Committee comes with, but first we need to kind of focus on the projects that are at hand with Village Hall and the library, making sure that the Nature Alliance's proposals are in fact incorporated into those projects. As far as green initiatives go, I think they're fantastic, and I'm in full support of that. But again, they do need to fit within a responsible budget. I mean, we've just recently had a meeting where the police chief was asked about electric squad cars. It didn't make sense from a logistics standpoint on her end, and at this point probably doesn't make sense from a budget aspect on our end. We need to be progressive in how we're moving forward with this, but we can't the funds just simply aren't always there for it. So we need to be cognizant of that too. We need to try and keep the taxes kind of down, and that's just kind of a place where you can do some of that at the moment.
Thank you. Carleen.
Great question. There are numerous ways that we can now and moving into the future continually address sustainability. I think when we decided on the library project, the things that we should cut and the things that we would keep, we prioritized sustainability, the solar, the geothermal. I think as we move into the Village Hall, we should do that as well. And as new projects come into the village and developers are putting together their proposals for us, we need to prioritize sustainability in that, so that we are encouraging the people who come here and want to build to do that in a sustainable and green fashion. In addition to that, I think it kind of is married to transportation and how we prioritize transportation and mass transportation in particular, so that we are not just all people who are in one car driving someplace, and we are not necessarily making our trips as efficient as possible. Are there ways that we could reach for efficiencies in the kinds of travel that we do to other places? There are a lot of things that we can investigate. There's not just one simple solution.
Thank you. Mike.
I wrote the ordinance creating the Sustainability Committee. I currently serve as the village board's representative on that committee. I think that sustainability needs to be a part of all village projects going forward. When we replace a roof on a village building, we should be looking at putting solar panels on top of that roof. When it makes sense to buy a vehicle, we should be looking at, does it make sense to purchase an electric vehicle as opposed to a gas vehicle, and start converting those portions of our fleet where possible. I think beyond just global warming, which I think is a existential threat for our children and our grandchildren, I think we need to look at reducing the impact of the village on the environment in general. And some of that is some of the changes in the affordable housing report that allows for smaller lot sizes and will preserve the farmland around the community. And I'm out of time.
Thank you. Jason.
All right, well, I will say I have not read the recommendations by the Sustainability Committee, so I'm very interested in learning about those recommendations. Green movement is very important to me. I would love to have sustainable energy for all of the village buildings. Now, that doesn't have to be solar across the board. You can also buy energy from wind farms and such. So we can be creative within our budgets to do that. Solar energy, how we deal with trash, recycling, all of those types of things are important. I believe Carleen is right about how we deal with transportation in Oregon. Many homes have 2, 3, 5 cars. I don't know. It depends how many kids you got. And how can we really encourage people to drive together? And really want to say more I'll share, if you want to hear more, I'll talk to you after.
Thank you. So we have time, I think, for one more question and then closing arguments, because we have about 10 minutes left. So the last question is, what do you believe are the major issues facing policing and public safety today? And we are going to go in the order of Jason, Carleen, Mike, and Derek.
Well,
Jason.
Yeah, this is not an easy question. However, I did read the report in the Oregon Observer, talking about the challenges of keeping good police officers, and I want to commend our police force because I've seen them at work in many times, especially Police Jenny, and I think they do a fantastic job. I think wages continue to need to be looked at. We have to pay well if we want police officers and public safety to work well. I also think it's a false dichotomy to say that you can support people of color and not police or vice versa. It needs to be a both and I believe Chief Jenny, from what I know of her, is on board with that. I've seen our police officers do wonderful jobs, and I'm excited to be able to work with them if I'm elected.
Thank you. Carleen.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What do you believe, as it relates to Oregon, what do you believe are the major issues facing policing and public safety today?
So the top issue facing Oregon policing right now is the lack of staff. I think it stretches the police officers to a point at which they're not necessarily always going to be able to be at their best because they're tired and they're working overtime. That said, I do believe that Chief Pegenkoff is doing her best to really address issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and is being very thoughtful about the people that she hires to police in the Village of Oregon. We have recently started diversity, equity, and inclusion training, and there are several members of the police force who are participating in that and are active participants. I am really encouraged at how many village staff are part of that as well, and I think that that will do a lot for the relationships within the community, and I hope that that will continue.
Thank you. Mike.
Yeah, I agree with Carleen. Our biggest issue right now is staffing and retention. We've addressed some of that with a new contract with the police union, but there's certainly much more we can do. We've been supporting the police department with new equipment, things like that. I think the police department has made great strides forward, particularly under Chief Pegenkoff. She has paid an immense amount of attention to reaching out to and involving community groups with the police and making the police part of the fabric of Oregon. She's paid attention to diversity within the police force, to hiring of women within the police force, and I think that the more that the police look like the people of Oregon, the more effective they will be.
Thank you. And Derek.
So as far as issues in policing and public safety go, just like to say, I kind of led the push to get the Public Safety Committee involved in the SRO contract, as that's one of the more contentious issues in regards to policing within the community. So I'm glad to see that there's now more than just a handful of people looking at that contract on an annual basis. When it comes to public safety, I also don't want to forget about our fire and EMS staff, who is also, as we've over the last couple of years worked to increase the pay for the paid on call and paid on premise personnel there, they're still underpaid for what they should be. These are people who put in thousands of hours every year, ensuring that there's staff on hand to handle people when they're at their most vulnerable, and they're getting paid roughly about the same as what some of our lower wage earners in the community make. And I think we need to continue to raise that floor and get those people up to where they deserve to be.
Thank you. So we're going to move to closing arguments, or not arguments. I'm a lawyer. Sorry. Closing statements. And for closing statements, we're going to go in the reverse order. We'll go Mike, Jason, Derek, and Carleen. So in about a minute, provide your closing statement, please. Mike.
Okay, I have a number of projects in flight with the village board that I would greatly appreciate the Village of Oregon giving me an opportunity to finish. One is making sure that the Sustainability Committee's report gets implemented for the village and doesn't sit on a shelf and collect dust like the Affordable Housing Report did. One is making sure that we continue to move down the process of getting the Affordable Housing Report implemented. And lastly, I'd like to see work more on developing programs that offer an alternative for supporting and growing Oregon businesses that do not rely on tax incremental financing, which raids our village coffers and gives our tax money to developers, raising all of our taxes. It's cost $246 this year per household to support that program, the TIF financing. That's $80 more than last year. It continues to go up. We need to change.
Thank you. Jason.
All right. Well, I want to thank each of you again for being here and all of our sponsors. It's a privilege. I believe I have the gifts and the skills to help our community navigate current and future challenges. I have 27 plus years of leadership in nonprofit organizations. I am a strategic thinker, strategic planner. I'm good at managing budgets and stretch budgets, and as all board members will know, we don't have money flowing out of our ears. If elected, I'll do my best to represent all of the residents of Oregon, those who attend all of the meetings and those who don't, which is most of us. And I hope I have earned your trust and respect and your vote. Thank you.
Derek.
So just a few things I want to touch on is about short and long-term goals. As far as long-term goals for the village, I think we need to focus on the southeast expansion, as that's where we can most likely grow our tax base. Also, the redevelopment of downtown areas. Also, as a village, we're currently involved in an update to our comprehensive plan, and that encompasses a whole lot of ground, especially in regards to the Keller Alpine Park area. If people want to see that soccer fields, if people want to see that nature area, now's the time to be involved in that. And I think also, as far as goals and plans going forward, we need to ensure that TIF, as Mike alluded to, is kind of a funny thing, but it's also one of those things where we can replenish our affordable housing fund if we use it responsibly. And going forward, we need to kind of focus on that common sense things to responsibly move our village forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. And Carleen.
Well, thanks again to the hosts and all of you who came out today. Many people really only pay attention to things at the state and national level, and they don't pay attention to local government and who is representing them in the things that affect their daily lives. So appreciate your being here today. In the next few years, the village board will influence what kind of community Oregon is, from the best options for the senior center to working with the village staff and residents to develop a comprehensive plan that reflects what we want and need in our community. While I am cautiously optimistic, and we didn't really talk about this today, about revenue sharing with state government, the governor and the state legislature have alluded to fixing the way that they share revenue with local governments. I don't think that will fix all our problems. We will still need to grow our tax base without burdening our residents, especially those who live on fixed incomes. I am committed to ensuring that the Village of Oregon is a place that recognizes and values the inherent humanity and dignity of every person, no matter their income level, skin color, gender identity, religion, or sexual orientation, so that we can all live, work, play, and thrive in this village. And I hope I've earned your vote on April 4th.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. Thank you, audience. That concludes this section. We will take a 5-minute break and bring in the next one. Thank you.
Nice job, everybody.
Pleasure sitting next to all of you.
The third and final session, the Town of Rutland candidates. Some of you were not here at the beginning, and so I'll briefly go over how the process will work today. Each candidate will have 1 minute to give an opening statement at the beginning, and at the end, you'll have 1 minute for a closing statement. In between, we'll be asking questions. The questions have been submitted by members of the audience. If you have questions while it comes up, you can write it on that blue paper and hold it up, and someone will come get it. OAP is working on consolidating those questions so that we can get to the most information in this very limited time that we have. We have approximately 35 minutes to get through this. And all candidates were invited. There was one candidate who couldn't make it today, Norman Arendt. I do ask that the audience be as quiet as possible, as this is being recorded and live streamed, and so we can't have extra noise in the background, or it'll make it hard for the people at home to hear us. All right, so we are going to get started. We're going to go down the order that you're sitting in for your opening statement, and then after that, I will be changing the order up a little bit so you don't always follow the same person. There is no rebuttal. This is a forum, not a debate. All right, so let's start with opening statements. Dina.
Thank you, OAP. We appreciate you including Rutland in this great community event. I thank all of the, if I can call you Rutlanders, for being here. We have a full house, and I appreciate that. My name is Dina Zentner. I have been serving you for 5 years on the Rutland Board, 3 as in supervisor and 2 as chairperson. It has been my pleasure and privilege to be a voice for all rural residents. I might not look rural today. Somebody said to me, hey, you didn't look like this yesterday. I'm a farm girl. I usually have dog hair, horse hair, hay all over me. So I represent the rural voice, and I do that with education, experience, and an established communication and relationship with our municipal partners.
Thank you. And Kent.
Thank you for the Oregon. I'm sorry. Thank you, Oregon Area Progressives, for hosting the event today. I want to thank you for allowing Rutland to be part of the discussions. My name is Kent Knutson. I'm running for town chair, so I'm running against Dina. I'm excited to share with you my 30 years of experience. But I have to say, Dina is much more youthful looking than I, but I am actually younger.
How do you know?
Google. Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue Williams, and I thank you to Oregon Media Group and Oregon Progressives for hosting this and letting us have an opportunity to address the Rutland residents that attended today and those that will be viewing us on YouTube. I have been a Rutland supervisor for the last 2 years. I'm just coming up to the end of my first term. I feel like I've been very successful as a supervisor for Rutland. Have been made myself available to community members and have tried to follow through with all the issues that have been brought forth. I look forward to having the opportunity to serve Rutland for another term.
Thank you. And Jim.
I'm Jim Dorn, and thank you for the invite. This is fairly new to me. It's my first time trying this, so please bear with me on this. My biggest goal here is to try and get complete communication between all of the Rutland residents and the town board. And with that being said, that's my main goal. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to start with an audience question related to ethics. And the order we're going to go in is Kent, Jim, Sue, and Dina. Dina? Yeah. All right. The question is, board members are typically active in their communities. They know a lot of people. and there's controversial subjects. How would you recognize a possible conflict of interest as a board member, both financial and personal, and how would you handle it? We're going to start with Kent.
That's a really good question. I guess first of all, you'd have to see how that relationship is going to react or follow in with the topic that you have. So if it's a financial decision and I would benefit from the decision being made, I could not be part of that decision. If it's a decision where my neighbor's going to benefit and I have a close personal relationship, that would be a very difficult situation to handle. So I think, you know, without being too cliche, you just got to go back to the golden rule. And if it smells funny, if it's going to look funny, you need to recuse yourself.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
It's going to depend upon what the situation is, who you talk to, what their aspects is of it, and have it analyzed before you make a major decision.
All right. Sue?
I think that the whole ethics question deals with when there's a personal gain to a topic, and if there isn't a personal gain either for yourself or a family member, is there the impression or idea that you will not come with a preconceived idea or position on what that issue is. And obviously, recently, most of you, I recognize from being in the audience attending our board meetings, I was involved in this very issue. When it came to the expansion of the quarry, I had to recuse myself. I felt like I had to recuse myself because I had taken a position earlier. It was the operator had requested that I recuse myself, and it was an appropriate request because this is a quasi-judicial procedure, and everybody, just like in a court of law, has a right to an unbiased jury. And that's the best kind of way I can give you an anecdote to this. And so if I believe that you have to represent all of the members of the town of Rutland fairly, and if you come in with a position already stated, you must recuse yourself.
Thank you. Dina?
Our board does not operate in isolation. We have numerous resources that we utilize on a daily basis. Some of these include, the most obvious would be the Wisconsin Ethics Commission, who I have on my phone. Another option is Wisconsin Towns Association attorneys at our disposal anytime. Another resource that every official uses is the handbook that gives us specific directions and resources. So we have resources. We have to examine our own motives. We have to remove ourselves from bias. And that might mean, even though we don't feel we're biased, public perception matters. I too was asked to recuse from the quarry expansion issue. So I'm going to read to you something that I keep on my handbook, and it says, maintain a balance between the rights of all citizens and that of the individual. And that's what we try to do.
Thank you. The next question is, and the order we'll go in for this question is Sue, Jim, Dina, and Kent. Rutland's comprehensive plan is due for updating next year. What aspects of the plan should be preserved and what should be changed? Sue.
Well, I think it's important that the entire plan be reviewed. And I think some of the key features of the plan that I think are overdue for being reviewed is one, I think in the last 20 years, I believe the vision of the current town of Rutland residents may have changed slightly. And so a new vision statement will be important. I think that land use The whole concept of land use and agricultural preservation should be reviewed. And I think that one of the ones that I don't think we have followed very closely, myself in the last 4 years that I've been very involved in participating as an attendee or now on the board, is the monitoring of the, and reviewing and updating the comprehensive plan. And I think that we should be following this plan. This is our roadmap from which the residents have decided they want us to follow for 20 years.
Thank you. Jim?
Well, I believe it needs to be updated and followed better. Is the way I can see right now, the farmland preservation is not being followed. We have too much land division divided out for housing to go up, which also increases traffic on our rural roads. Every time you put a house up, there's a minimum of 2 more vehicles on the road at least. So you have that road that's got more vehicles on it, plus your other roads that got vehicles going to it. And most of what I've seen is we're losing farmland for that house to be developed. Another part of the issue is annexation from cities and villages. Annexing more farmland away that's usually pretty good farmland to expand the development of their villages and cities. So that really needs to be looked at.
Thank you. Dina?
I fully agree with Supervisor Williams. We do need to monitor and realize that our comp plan is a blueprint for the future. And we are lucky in Rutland because for the first time in history, we have a plan commission chair who actually works closely with the board. A young person, 30-something, who offers ideas of youth, and that's where we need to be diverse in Rutland. If you look at our comp plan, it says, and this goes back to 2001, it says that there is a conflict between rural and urban values. Yes, there is. It continues today, but we can get through that, and I plan on doing that with listening sessions outside of the Rutland board meetings, so everyone can be heard.
Thank you. And Kent?
Well, the town plan is our guide. And sometimes we skip a few of the pages or maybe a few of the paragraphs, and at times in the past, some liberties have been taken in regard to following the plan. This past few weeks, I've been talking with many of the past chairpersons and supervisors who were on this board years and years ago. They were the ones that put the current comp plan together. Jim Lundy and Milt Spurley, their names are on the current comp plan. And so I've been talking to Milt about the process and procedure that they used to put the current comp plan together. I have to agree with all 3 of them, so without repeating everything that's been done, ag land preservation, following the process and procedures that were set years ago, the comp plan does need to be revised probably over in this next 12 to 18 months.
Okay. The next question, and we're going to go in this order. We're going to go Jim, Kent, Sue, and Dina. Like most of Dane County, Rutland is becoming increasingly residential. How do you resolve the tension between family homes and business land uses? This question is not necessarily about agriculture, but other land uses as well, such as quarries, asphalt plants, and explosive storage facilities. Jim?
That's a very good question. We need to have businesses in the area. Business is a part of growing, a part of life. Without business, you don't have employment. You don't have items such as farming. We don't have grain crops and milk and stuff like that. Mining is the same way. We need the mining to make the blacktop, to make the roads better, for foundation use, for concrete, for pouring homes and or whatever. Somehow we need to work it together so people are more respectful to each other on each part, whether it be the homeowner or the business owner. And it's doable, it really is, but it takes time and it takes understanding from all people. And which is why the whole township needs to start to come together on what's good for the township. And that's everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Kent?
Yeah, Jim and I, we had a Coke together 2-3 weeks ago. This particular topic did not come up. But during part of that discussion, working together and getting along together is a really important part that, you know, our township needs to work on. Farming's really important, but so is the growing of our tax base. And the growing of your tax base comes with a new home. How do you blend the farmers benefit from selling their splits? They get their splits, they sell the splits, and then somebody else gets to build a new home. Well, it does add traffic, but when you start imposing on somebody's property that they already have, so for instance, if you're going to put a new quarry within 300 feet of a current home, yeah, there's going to be some issues raised. So there needs to be some standards set, so when these issues do come up again, at least we have a background to work from going forward.
Thank you. Sue?
I agree with what's been said, going on into it a little bit further. Again, going back to using the comp plan, it's been designated where our commercial areas are already located within the comp plan. And we are actually behind when it comes to what we thought was going to be the growth of the town of Rutland by about 400 people already. They had predicted back in 2024 when the comp plan was made, or 2004, that by this year we would have 2,400 residents, and we don't. We're under 2,000. Family homes bring a good tax base, yes. But as homes and businesses come closer and closer together, you're going to potentially have conflict. And that conflict, a good example would be several years ago we had the Old Stone Pet Lodge come in. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of controversy around that. People who lived nearby thought that there was going to be barking dogs. That board did a nice job trying to listen to everybody, provide everybody an opportunity to be heard. And I don't believe there was a sunset because it was a building structure, but they allowed a voice to be heard, and ultimately it came in, and now everybody adores that business. And it's right in the midst of all kinds of homes. So it can be done, but it's allowing people the opportunity to voice their concerns, the board to listen to those concerns and try to do what they can to approve a CUP that would be appropriate so that there can be some cohesiveness as much as possible.
Thank you. Dina?
I was honored about 6 months ago by being asked to be on the rural housing strategy by the Dane County Zoning Department. And through this committee, I have already learned so much and want to present that to the board, want to present that to our residents, and I feel that opportunity is lacking. Some people don't want to come to our board meetings, and I understand why. I want to provide outside listening sessions. I recently had a meeting in my home during a collection center committee, and we had 3 new residents come and voice their opinion and offer their insight. So I believe that the listening sessions that were proposed to the board, where we will meet in an informal setting and hear one another in a civil way, in a cooperative way, in a kind way, will make all the difference.
Thank you. So our next question is, we're going to go with Dina, Sue, Kent, Jim. This is the next question. Residents have grown very concerned about road safety due to dump truck traffic and speeding vehicles. What ideas do you have to improve road safety? Please give an example. Dina.
Okay, well, I can start with what we've already done. Road safety is important to me, not just on one road, but on several of our main thoroughfares, if you call them that. I had a site survey meeting at my house, and we brainstormed ideas together. We ended up talking about the little flags that are on. We put them on 45 of our speed limit signs. We incorporated hidden driveway signs. I have twice each spring put Dane County speedboard signs up. We've talked about getting our own speedboard sign, Rutland owned, budget permitting. Right now, we have brainstormed some wonderful possibilities. It's an ongoing discussion. We'd like to assess what has worked in the past and move forward with continual ideas. So we're looking at several things that we discussed at our last board meeting that I think will be worthy of pursuing.
Thank you. Sue.
Yeah, this has been pretty much a monthly topic. We hear, and in between meetings, so I get emails about concerns about safety, road safety, and I agree, it's something that we continue to need to look at. And things that we have tried that seems to have been successful to some degree is putting the flags on the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit signs throughout Rutland. I have talked numerous times, and we're reconsidering again doing speed studies to see if there would be opportunities to lower the speed within Rutland even further. On certain roads, we're looking at doing that on Old Stage Center and Lake Kaganza between A and 138. The engineer that I talked to at Dane County Highway actually gave us a really good suggestion, which is you don't have to change anything physical, but shrinking the road in appearance by using lanes, painting lanes, and making them narrower than what they currently are. And people will slow their speeds down if they feel they have to stay within their lanes. They're actually doing a pilot in Stoughton right now on that, on County Highway AB. And so there's all kinds of wonderful things to do. We need to continue to try to address the safety on our roadways.
Thank you. Kent.
Well, the road safety has been I would say, a monthly topic at the town hall for probably a good 18 months. And I'm glad to see that the flags are out there. This past meeting, there was some discussion of collecting data on traffic. And so I guess my concern is if we're going to go through a process of collecting data, I hope it's data that can be useful and not just one piece of information. So an example would be how many cars per day? What type of cars per day? Are they trucks? Are they semis? Is it farm equipment? What are the weights of these vehicles? What type of road bed do we have to support these types of vehicles? What's the speed that we're seeing? So when we go through a process to collect a lot of data, I hope it's data we can use in the future and not have to go back and say, well, the speed limit is 62 miles an hour and that's the average vehicle. That might help us with the speed limit, but there's so much we could do if we had additional information. So rather than taking 2 or 3 surveys, I hope we can do a good job and collect a lot of information in one survey.
Thank you. And Jim.
Well, the first time I seen the red flags on the road sign really kind of shocked me. I'm driving down the road and I see that flag and I was more worried about somebody behind the sign grabbing the flag and walking across the road like you see in villages. That caught me more than the speed limit sign, which I do know what the speed limit is. I just thought I'd bring that up. The other thing is we need to have a good study done on our roads for speed, for the width of them, and where to start making some kind of an adjustment to slow some of the speed down. It's obvious the county does not have enough patrols to go out and patrol these areas for us at all times of the day. The other thing, I brought this up a long time ago, but at our last board meeting, there was a gentleman there that brought up about potholes on roads. And he basically stated, on the road I lived on, traffic was fairly slow and not a lot. They've redone the road, traffic has picked up over double, and so has the speed. So it's something we might want to consider a little bit. The other thing is, you know, it's funny, but it's true. The other thing is, we might want to consider our roads, since they were built back in the 1930s. We have increased traffic on them. We have homes on them. We have truck traffic on them. Are they big enough and correct enough for all this extra traffic? So, like I'm saying, a study needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have time for, I think we have time for one more question and then closing statements. So we'll see how long this one takes. Maybe we can squeeze in two. The question we have, and the order we're going to go in, we're going to go Kent, Jim, Sue, Dina. The question is, when there is a difficult issue facing the town, how do you facilitate a constructive discussion among residents? Kent.
Well, I think you need to set a process and procedure for every meeting. So part of that process and procedure would be you are allowed to hear the concerns of the residents. The residents need to know that they've been heard. The board then needs to discuss what those needs are. So for an unproductive meeting, people express a concern or a complaint, and then it's just kind of pushed under the rug. My concern is, or my fact would be, we need to hear these concerns, we need to talk about them, the board needs to discuss them, and then we need to give some conclusion or resolution back to the people who have that concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim.
That's a good question. It needs to be brought up. People need to be heard. The board needs to make a discussion on it, not just the one person on the board, but the whole board needs to make a discussion on it and get back to that person as results or what should go forward with it.
All right. Sue.
I have worked very hard during this last 2 years to make sure that we continue to have community input available to our residents at every single meeting and prior to when decisions are being made. Otherwise, the input is too late if the decision was made. There's always going to be difficult discussions coming forth. Right now, the one that we're facing is the ATV, UTV as an example, just came up, and we're already hearing there's going to be a split in our community. With that being said, we need to be very mindful and listen to people. We need to collect the data from everyone, not just the vocal few, and find out where our residents really stand on this issue, and then if possible, find out if there's a way to compromise so that there might be a win-win. Sometimes you can't have win-wins, and what I mean by that in this situation is there an area in Rutland that we could allow it, that people support it, and not have it in another area. So this is something that I have done my entire 31 years as a law enforcement official in the city of Madison. I'm very used to mediating conflict resolution.
Thank you. Dina.
I agree that collecting data is essential, not just data from the people that brave our board meetings, but data from the entire Rutland population. We have about 2,000 residents in Rutland. And I will tell you what I have done in another context. Most of us don't really like surveys, but we decided to move forward, send a survey to every single household, 880 in Rutland. We were said, oh, no, you won't get a response. The response rate is really low. I'm telling you right now, as of right now, we have 50% response rate telling us how we can improve with the collection center, how we can have best management practices. So there are many ways to understand our residents' needs outside of board meetings. I encourage the board, past, future, or present, to incorporate the listening sessions that I have proposed so we can meet in settings outside of the board. Thank you.
All right, I think we can squeeze one more in. We have a little over 7 minutes, so mind your time. And we're going to go Sue, Jim, Dina, Kent. Kent. The question is, as a board member, you will be faced with making major decisions about spending, future growth, taxes, among other things. How would you balance conflicting points of view, and what would you rely on to make your decision? Sue.
All the budgets are there's not a lot of wiggle room in budgets. They're kind of a finite thing. And so based on what our community is telling us is important to them, which is typically road safety, road maintenance, road repair, is usually the number one thing. We have to prioritize what it is that we're going to be spending our money on. Public safety is becoming a new one, and this year we, as the town board, talked about seeing if we could go into partnership with the town of Oregon in hiring a Dane County deputy to see if they could actually help us monitor and enforce speed limits and some of our ordinances. Unfortunately, we didn't have the budget. We don't have the budget, so we put it on hold. Maybe in 2024 we can, but this year we can't. So we have to constantly look at what we're spending our money on, finding ways to be fiscally appropriate in how we're spending the money, and seeing if there's ways we can collaborate, like sharing the cost of a deputy with the town of Oregon or other townships.
Thank you. Jim.
That's a good issue. I was at the last budget meetings for last year and this year, and we were conservative about it to try and hold costs down. And with costs rising in the last couple of years, this budget only went up $19,000 over the year before, which was very low. I thought to myself, and so have other people have mentioned that. So a good job was done there. But we have a lot facing us yet. This road deal is making a big issue, and we need to find out from all the residents if that's what they want to put in. You know, a budget made to really study these roads out. The other thing is we're also facing the possibility of another town hall, which is very expensive. There is where we need input from all of our residents on how much they would like to spend on something like that before we get going too far. So my biggest emphasis is we need more residents' input on some of this stuff. Point blank. Thank you.
Thank you. Dina.
I agree, and I think all of us in government know that we have very little discretionary spending. We put our focus and energy into what provides the best services for the whole. And we need to, as a board, implement what's called successive planning. So we're not just looking at needs as they come up. We look at goals within a range. And in order to do that, we need input from all of the citizens, not just a few that come to the meetings every month, but everybody. And we need to listen. For example, my biggest strength is listening one-on-one. I'm on the broadband task force. I have represented rural voices for years. So I like personal contact. I like to hear residents call me. I like to meet privately with you in my house, in your house, in any place. So involving the residents, again, is imperative.
Thank you. Kent.
Well, I happened to talk with Mark Porter here last couple of weeks about this very topic. And one of the questions I had for him is, how has our budget changed over the past years? And how does our budget compare to the budget of the other communities around us? And his answer was, you know, that's a good question for Dawn. So I haven't reached out to Dawn yet, and I'm sure she has all this data. But I think it's important that people know where we came from, what our costs have been over the past years, how are our costs increasing today compared to other townships. Definitely, the town hall is going to be a big impact on this. I don't know that we should build a town hall based upon we want to build a $1 million building. I think the town hall might need to be based on how big of a town hall do we need and what do the mechanics need to work on the equipment. So the budget is going to be a process that never ends, goes on every year, and I'm looking forward to working on that with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And so now we're going to go to closing statements. We're going to go Jim, Sue, Kent, and Dina. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, thank you. Number one, I thank all of you for coming and for your questions. This, like I said, is new to me. I'm hoping I can serve you well. And I'd appreciate your vote and some trust in me to try. If I don't work out, you can always kick me out. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sue.
And I too thank everybody for attending, and again, thanking the organizations that sponsored this, and giving me an opportunity to talk to you a little bit, of course, on every single one of the questions. I could have gone on for about 15 minutes alone. But I think some of the things that are facing the town in the next 2 years will be that redoing the comp plan, which I have a real desire to be a part of. I think I've proven to be a good leader, a good listener. I follow through with things, and I appreciate your vote so that I can continue that on for another 2 years.
Thank you. Kent.
Sue has done a very good job in putting together the foundation for what might be our new town hall. She's done a lot of work gathering data along with Mark Peterson. And there is going to be a meet and greet at the HQ on March 15th. I think it's 6:30 p.m. So if those of you who want to come and talk to us as individuals, please come and join us there. Again, I'm looking forward to your vote. I'm looking forward to working with our town supervisors, and I look forward to working for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Dina.
Thank you, everyone. It's great to see how many people are engaged in our local government. And I have had the privilege and pleasure of working in local government, Dane County government, and state government for the past 5 years. With that, I have immersed myself in education. And I can tell you, and you all know, we have seminars, workshops, conventions. There's a tremendous learning curve in being your representative and understanding. My strength is in communicating personally. I have talked to elected officials in every municipality, not just the contiguous ones, but we don't operate in isolation. We work in partnership with other elected officials. What are you doing with this situation, or how have you handled this? So it's a very extensive amount of communicating, learning about others, learning about successes of other communities, of working together collaboratively. And that's what I'm good at. I want to continue my work on the Dane County Broadband Task Force, and I want to continue my work with the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy, among other local committees that I'm on. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for all your answers. Thank you, audience, for your participation and your attention. And that concludes our forum today. Thank you.
Thank you.